Hey everyone, today we're going to be reviewing Android Kikaider, the animation. This is an anime that I saw way back in the day on Adult Swim. They aired this show. I watched it. It's a pretty short show. It's like 12 episodes. I have all the DVDs. Here's Volume 2. Volume 3. I like all the shininess. See how shiny it all is? Then the final volume here. And then there is Kikaider 01, original video animation. These are all animes based on an older, I don't know what exactly you would call it, but these were like really popular back in the day. But they were these superheroes. It's not really superheroes. This is the best. I have the soundtrack too. The soundtrack. There it is. But yeah, let me actually show you a little bit of what this is actually based off of, okay? So, okay. So, here we go. Here's like the original actual video here. As you can see, Kikaider episode 1. Look at this. You can find this on YouTube here if you wish to actually watch the full thing. But there it is. I mean, it's kind of funny. And then here's also Kikaider 01, which is a different series. There's also like multiple series. Here's like a different series, but yeah. Again, it's just, these are like so popular in Japan back in the day, but they're not really, I've never watched any of them, obviously, because, you know, but yeah, I just found that interesting because I never knew about that when I actually watched the anime, but then I looked it up later. So what exactly is this show about now? Okay, so I own all the DVDs. As I said, there are 13 episodes, so pretty much like half a season, because most of the time a lot of animes will have 26 episodes. This one has 13 episodes. So there's 13 episodes. There is also the original video animation, which is 4 episodes long. So that's an additional few episodes there. And yeah, let's just talk a little bit about a bit about what this show's about. Okay, these are androids, and the whole story is the story of Pinocchio, essentially. If you're familiar with the story of Pinocchio, it is Geppetto builds a boy, a wooden boy that he wants to call his own son, that he wants to be his own son, and he says, "One day you will be a real boy." That's essentially what this is based on. And that's actually like the first scene you see, and the very last scene you will see. Someone reading the book of Pinocchio. And except for a wooden boy, it is instead a android boy. Yeah, here's like a better image of him on the insert here. So his name is Jiro. Kikaider. Now, Android Kikaider, it's also known as Humanoid Kikaider. That's actually what the soundtrack says on it, Humanoid Kikaider. But here it was just labeled as Android Kikaider. So that is what I'll be referring to it as. So how the thing starts is with the story of Pinocchio. And there is this man known as Dr. Komioji. I don't know if there's any images of any of these people, to be honest with you. I don't think that there are, so I can't really show you the images. Let's just take a quick look and see. There could be some like inside here, but oh, here's like a good image of him. Dr. Komioji in his younger days. There he is. A lot of the characters, they have like very big eyes. The animation style is really interesting, it's unique, and yeah, there's a lot of interesting things there when it comes to the actual design of the characters. Yeah, here's a better image of Dr. Komioji here. This is Professor Gill. This is Masadu and Mitsuko. And this is Jiro in his human form when he's not looking like that. Okay, this is him like in a more human representation. So what happens is Dr. Komioji he builds androids. And he decided one day to build an android with a conscious circuit. a Gemini circuit is what it's referred to as. A conscience circuit that allows him to have emotions and to actually feel things. Then, after he actually makes this first robot, Jiro, and he awakens, his whole lab gets destroyed, and an evil doctor known as Professor Gill comes in and takes Komioji away. This is actually Gill right here, this evil man. He's like this, I don't know how tall he is. He's relatively tall, and he's like really skinny. He's like super skinny. He's like underweight skinny. Probably like me. Probably like me. So yeah, that's pretty much all that you see at that point. And then Jiro ends up meeting up with the two other characters who are the son and daughter of Dr. Komioji, which is Misadu and Mitsuko, which I showed them already. That's them right there. Misadu and Mitsuko. They are the siblings of Dr. Komioji. And so Jiro ends up meeting up with them, and then he realizes, that is when the family realizes that he's actually an android. He is actually one of the experiments that was created by their father. Now, the thing is, Professor Gill, the evil scientist, he has this flute, and he will play the flute, and it makes Jiro's mind change. It's like he's starting to follow bad orders at that point. Because Professor Gill obviously has some sort of way of controlling him, and he plays the flute and he's able to control him. What happens one time is that he ends up choking Mitsuko, and then she says, and this is where most of the episodes continue from here. She ends up calling him a mad machine because she gets choked by him. And what happens then is that he goes off on his own because he's all upset. He's like, is that a good order or a bad order, to do whatever else? And probably for about half or maybe 2/3 of the entire series, maybe, I don't even know, a lot of it, he's just running away. He can't face his problems. He's running away. He's hiding. Whenever he comes into contact with Mitsuko, he gets so upset because like, I can't have her see me in this android form, because each episode focuses on like a different android that Professor Gill is bringing out to try to destroy Kikaider. But then when Mitsuko comes into that area, he feels ashamed. He feels ashamed that he looks like this. Like, don't look at me. Don't view me. I'm just a mad machine. So most of the episodes are just him running away, and it just gets a bit repetitive at that point. It's like, okay, when are you going to get to the point that Then pretty much like the last few episodes is when everything starts to get revealed and more answers start to come out. So pretty much what happens is that Professor Gill, he has an organization known as Dark, and he actually used to work with, or was associated with, Dr. Komioji. And what happened was Professor Gill actually killed the first son of Dr. Komioji, which his name was Ichido. And then he had him, it's like he introduced him to his next wife that he would have kids with Mitsuko and Misadu, and introduces them to, his new wife, which his wife ends up becoming, is a spy essentially. So Gill is spying on Dr. Komioji. Dr. Komioji is essentially working for Professor Gill, during this time, because he offered him, pretty much like, okay, you can work for me because your son died. But what happens is that, as I said, Professor Gill was actually the one responsible for killing Ichido. So, that was when these kids were young. And then many, many years later, when they grew up, that's when Mitsuko decides, I want to meet my mom. I want to find out who this Professor Gill is, because she knows that he is some sort of really bad person who was working with Dr. Komyoji, and she's trying to find her father because she doesn't know where her father went after the lab exploded in the first episode when Jiro awoke. So she's just trying to look for answers, and she ends up meeting her mom, and that's when her mom confesses that, you know, she was a spy this whole time, and she, you know, just, it was very hard for her to actually give up the parent role and to just leave them, because those were the orders that she was given. Gil told her what to do because she was the spy. So the mother ends up killing herself, but giving a blueprint for this Gemini conscious circuit within inside of Jiro so they could perfect it, because it was a bit defective at first. Then, you know, pretty much like right at the very end, there is this other android known as the Kikaider. Let's see if there's an image of him. There may be an image of him. Hopefully there is. Yes, there is. Okay. Right here. The black one. Okay. There is this brain up in the top of it, and that actually turns out to be Dr. Komyoji's brain. So they actually took it out of his body and put it into this Kikaider. And what happens then is okay. I was trying to reflect back. Okay, so towards the end there, all you see is the brain. You don't realize that Dr. Komyoji is actually in there, because he's not in control of the body. It is the android, the Kikaider, which is being controlled by Gil. And what happens then is Professor Gil ends up losing some of that control over Kikaider, and Dr. Komyoji ends up taking control of the Kikaider body here. And he's saying to his daughter, it's like, Mitsuko, it's me, your father. And then they devise a plan to actually get into Professor Gil's base and to go in there, and they essentially get in by tricking the guards that, okay, Kikaider has taken out Kikaider, Jiro, and they are going to be going in to the base. But when they go in there, you know, that's when they can actually shut the place down and try to get Dr. Komyoji back out of there and get his brain intact, and to hopefully, you know, get his brain back into his body as well. So once they all evacuate that system there, and Kikaider's just left to battle Gil. You know, Gil is a human. He can't really do anything. But he ends up letting Gil go because, you know, he has a conscience after all. You know, he doesn't want to kill people. He doesn't want to hurt people, despite the fact that Gil at times was controlling him and having him destroy so many different things. And he suddenly, it was like, think of it like an altered personality. Like you would have all these different things you would be doing, and he's like destroying all these things, and then he stops playing the flute, he stops controlling him. You wake up, what did I just do? I just destroyed all these people were around me, cowered in fear. It's terrifying. So he does not want to hurt anyone. He wants to, you know, be able to actually help people. And so he did not want to kill Gil, but there was an explosion that happened in Gil's base, and you know, pretty much all that you may think is like, okay, I guess Jiro possibly died, Gil died, who knows what happened there. And you know, at the very end, you have Mitsuko and Masaru at home, and you see their father Komyoji laying in bed after the operations, like he's going to make a full recovery, and they're just waiting for Jiro to return home. Says, you know, he promised that he would be back, that he would promise that he would return home one day. And then the very last scene you see is just Jiro walking through the fog. So it's really interesting, because that's the final episode. There's no more after that until we get to the OVA, but original video animation. But it is interesting because as things progress, you see like a romance form between Mitsuko and Jiro, a love between a human and an android. If this is actually the perfect image to sum it up here, look. They end up kissing here. And then you see not really that, but you know, it's you kind of see a little something, but it's like, okay, I don't know how you did that. I don't know how you did that, but okay, okay, interesting. So yeah, I don't know if he would have ever returned at that point. He's now all on his own. So that is the actual like main series. And then, as I mentioned, there is, oh, I should also mention again the soundtrack. I own the soundtrack. This is actually one of the first soundtracks I ever owned of any anime. It's a pretty good, I would say. It's pretty decent music, and I don't know how rare this is. I think this thing is pretty rare now, but yeah. So moving on to the original video animation, Kikaider 01. The animation. Now, the thing is, if you look, there's actually two Kikaiders here. The thing with this is, this goes a completely different direction. This is not quite a continuation, but it is a different sort of branch off of the end of the actual main series. And basically, what happens is, in a way, it is a direct sequel, but there is no Professor Gill. There is no Dr. Komioji. You don't see him or his family. You don't see Mitsuko. You don't see Misadu at all. But Professor Gill is actually the main person here, and there are some flashbacks to Professor Gill from the main series. So that is where it continues off. I think that there's a different director for this, obviously, because it definitely looks different. The tone is very different. Like it's much more fast paced. And honestly, at first, initially, I didn't really care for the second one, the second season, but it actually is, I would say, probably better because it's much more intense. And think of it like a movie. There are 4 episodes, and in total, it will probably be about an hour and 30, hour and 40 minutes in total. I would recommend watching it as a movie instead of individual episodes, because it all kind of goes along here, and it's very intense here. Different animation style, different music as well. As I was watching it, the music composer, I was like, this sounds an awful lot like Inuyasha music, and sure enough, it is actually the same composer who did this series. As opposed to the first series has a different music composer, but this one sounded like Inuyasha music, and it very much is. So instead, there's also newer characters here. Okay, what are their names? Raiko. Let's see. Raiko or Rico. Rieko. There you go. Rieko, and then Akira, the boy. So that kind of resembles, Mitsuko and Misadu, but they are different. The boy is actually Professor Gill's son. And there's the whole premise is that there were tons of Professor Gill's androids trying to come after him. A lot of these robots, every single episode is just they're constantly running away, constantly trying to evade. And Professor Gill wants his son back because he wants to use his power in this ultimate weapon that they want to destroy the city with. Okay? Now, there's also a few other characters that get introduced here. I open this up here. You have, I don't remember all of their names here. I think this is Jiro. I think this is Ichido, which Ichido in the main anime was a human son, I believe, of Dr. Komioji. But this one, he's actually an android made by Dr. Komioji. I think this one's name is Rei, and this one's name is Jinder, and that's like the female one. So they're all Kikaiders here. She shoots lasers from her boobs. Look at her boobs. She shoots like these ultrasonic lasers from like her boobs and everything. So interesting stuff here. And all these androids, none of them have a conscious circuit. Only Jiro does. And that gets brought up again. The conscious circuit, the Gemini circuit, Professor Gil wants to get rid of it so he can control Jiro. But he wasn't able to do it, you know? He can't really control him as well as he wanted to. So Professor Gil is dead. But what happens is he ends up getting put into the body of a Kikaider, just like Dr. Komiyoji did. So you have the brain up in that black suit again, and he's in control of everything. So he's still alive. He's still there. He's, you know, still a big threat here. And what happens, and this is, it does get a bit emotional as it goes along, as the story progresses, but the woman here who was taking care of the son of Professor Gil, you know, I guess she would be considered the imam, or maybe some sort of caretaker. But I'd imagine, yes, that would certainly be a mother. It doesn't really indicate that too much, but it's like they always know where they are. Like there's no place to hide. And then Professor Gil approached like I made you. You know, you were here to monitor my son, Akira. So she actually turns out to be an android, but she's in disbelief. She's in disbelief. Like, I cannot believe. I refuse to believe that I am an android. I have all these memories of these places that I've been to, things that I did when I was younger. It's like, yes, because I have implanted them. That is what Professor Gil was saying. I have implanted these memories in you. Then her real form is shown here. I don't think it's on here at all, but she's like this nice, like golden looking android here. And it's really interesting. And one of Professor Gil's servants, which was actually her, she was the only one who was actually working for Professor Gil. The other ones weren't, but she was working. But up until that moment, she decides to defy Gil. She decides to finally defy him. So she ends up saving the woman here, Ryoko. It's hard to pronounce her name. As all of the other Kikaiders are kind of like trapped. But what happens then, you know, is Ryoko ends up dying. She ends up getting killed by, you know, Gil or one of his robot servants, and that's kind of emotional there because you see the boy. You see the boy there, you know, seeing the dead his caretaker all his life. You know, he's been running in fear his entire life, just terrified. So that's pretty sad as well. So then finally, after that, you know, then Gil finally has his son back, which means he can use it for this ultimate weapon, which is known as the Armageddon Lord. And he's going to use his own son as the power source, using his fear and his anxiety. So he's been living in fear and anxiety his whole life. So you got to imagine this power is going to be, you know, just incredible. So all the Kikaiders are trying to fight this gigantic machine. They all get sucked inside of it, and Gil performs an operation on all of them and installs a submission circuit into them, so they would all obey him. And he even ends up capturing Jiro, the main guy, and he puts the submission circuit in there. But what happens then is, because they're all slaves of Professor Gil, essentially, there is a problem with Akira when he's in, you know, getting used for all of his power to destroy the city. Right before it fired, they needed to take him out of there and kind of comfort him in some way, because his brainwaves are very unstable. But because the actual caretaker, the mother, was no longer around, Professor Gil ordered her to take care of him. Now, androids, because they are very, you know, they kind of share a lot of similar things here. She, you know, starts taking care of this kid here, and then suddenly it's like she switches into this mother role that this one had, and she starts to have, like, you know, starts to feel like she's a mother, you know, and then she ends up escaping with the kid, out of this whole contraption. And Kikaider then, I mean, she actually lets Kikaider go before she leaves at some point, because Kikaider, Jiro ends up tricking her in some way, because, you know, androids can't lie. That was another big premise of this. Androids cannot lie. He always has to tell the truth. But he ends up tricking her to let him free, because he's like, I have to help Gil, but I can't help him when I'm trapped in here. Let me out of here. And that's when, you know, after he got the submission circuit installed within him. So at the very end then there, okay, so the sun is off of the Armageddon Lord contraption. He's off of there. All that's really left is Jiro and Gil. That's all that's really left. And what happens then is, you know, Jiro approaches Gil, but this time he's much angrier. And because he has that submission circuit within him, he has like the submission circuit, which is like the evil part. Then he has the conscious circuit, which is the good part. Hopefully you kind of see where I'm going with this. He has two parts now. And this is where it can get a little bit emotional too, because it's now he feels as though he can finally be a human, because he has the good side and the bad side. Humans are not all good, humans are not all bad. They have a good and bad side. Now he has both. He has both within him, and he says, you know, he's gripping the head of the Kikaider where Professor Gil's brain is, and he's going to crush it and kill him. And he says, with this final act, I will finally be a human, because now it's finally his time to become a human, to commit this bad act of killing, so he can be a human, to give in to some of his, you know, desires and submissions here, but also have that good side. That's what ends up happening. Gil is finally dead. Gil is finally dead, and then at the very end, you have the story of Pinocchio being read again. It says, and it said, now that Pinocchio is a real boy, I wonder if he ever truly found happiness. And then you see Jiro walking away, and he's crying. And he was crying during the whole moment of killing Gil as well. So, because the thing is, when he approaches Gil initially, he's actually in his android form, but then before he kills him, he turns back into like his human-looking form, and he kills him. So, yeah, that is pretty much the premise of it. So it is a bit, it does get a bit sad at the end, because it's like you have this robot here who wanted to become human so bad. And now with both the good and bad side within him, he's able to actually do that. He's able to actually become a complete human here. So it's really interesting. You know, again, I don't know how the actual series is the actual real life series. I just know the animated series. So that was all for this review. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I don't know where you would be able to watch this, but I own it all, so I watch it all, and it's the first series. I liked it. Again, back in the day, I liked the original series, Android Kikaider the animation, not Kikaider 001 the animation. But you know, I think I actually like Kikaider 01 the animation better, because I think it's much more fast-paced, and it gets to the point. It's not like, oh, 3/4 of the episode he's running away. He thinks he's a mad machine. It's like, no. So that was it. You all take care. Have a great one, and let me know if you've ever watched this show before. Okay? You all take care. Bye-bye.